Good afternoon, everybody. It's Emily Wilmoth here, environmental educator with New Jersey Audubon. Thank you for tuning in for our final live streaming session from the Cape May Hawkwatch. And also, if you've been tuning in weekly at 10 a.m., thank you for your patience with this slight delay this morning. We had some pretty crazy weather. Not only was it raining, but it was really strong wind. So we had rain coming sideways even into the pavilion here. So thank you for your flexibility and again for tuning in. I'd like to thank our sponsors, as always, Swarovski Optics and Actions at EBMF for their support. Hard to believe, Eric and I only have one more day. Tomorrow's our last day doing interpretation up at the Hawkwatch, and the season has really flown by, no pun intended. But yeah, it's just crazy how fast the time has gone. And today for our final session, I want to kind of focus on time and timing of migration. So first, there's variations in timing, whether birds migrate during the day or at night. So of course, most of the birds that we're counting up here at the Hawkwatch are diurnal migrants, meaning they migrate during the day, but lots of birds actually migrate at night. I think we may have mentioned previously, lots of songbirds migrate at night, but there's also raptors that migrate at night, like owls. So we've actually counted a short-eared owl, I believe, from the Hawkwatch this season. Every once in a while, we'll see a short-eared owl or a long-eared owl actually lift up out of the trees, later in the day around dusk. So we'll kind of catch them as they're taking off for their migration for the night. So that's always a really special. There's other owls that we haven't counted from the Hawkwatch, but do indeed migrate at night. One of my favorites is the northern saw-whet owl. So they're this teeny tiny, adorable looking owl. And for the longest time, people actually thought that they were really uncommon and that they were residents in the areas that they did exist, so that they weren't migratory birds at all. But turns out they are migratory, and in fact, they're actually pretty common. A site that Eric and I actually both used to work at called Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory up in Duluth, Minnesota, on a good night can catch a couple hundred saw-whet owls in a single night as they migrate through. But previously, people were just kind of overlooking them because during the day they sit very still, they're very quiet, they're very camouflaged. But turns out at night, if you set up nets and you use an audio lure to kind of call these birds in, you start to notice that there's tons of them around. And so we've learned a lot about saw-whet owl migration from those banding efforts that I just described. But a lot of migration that goes on at night is still really not fully understood. We've got Halloween coming up tomorrow, and you think of owls and bats as sort of like Halloween themed species because of that sort of mysterious nature they have that likely comes along with being nocturnal. So we're still learning a lot about owl migration, about bat migration, about moths, these sort of nocturnal species. But there's some really cool technology coming out that's helping us to learn about these things. So some folks have been coming up to the Hawkwatch on some recent evenings and using actually a thermal scope. So it creates thermal images of the birds flying over the sky at night. Pretty outstanding. There's also bat call detectors that can pick up these really high frequency bat calls that the human ear can't even pick up. So really fascinating stuff. I'm gonna take over the camera here. So it is our final couple days of the Hawkwatch. So Eric, would you like to share maybe a favorite memory that you've had from the Hawkwatch so far this season?
There have been so many fun memories here at the Cape May Hawkwatch, and it really is near impossible to pick just one. There were several days when we had northwest winds coming through, nice strong northwest winds, and the sky was truly filled with sharp-shinned hawks. Like no matter where you looked, binoculars or not, you could not see these sharp-shinned hawks coming through, along with many other relatives of theirs, like the bootios that were coming through, bald eagles and all. And it's one of those experiences where when you're in the moment looking at these beautiful birds, you can't help but just take a step back and be like, this is incredible. It's that hawk watching zen and everything. It was just, we had many, many days like that because of so many good northwest winds that came through. One moment in particular was actually on one of my days off, and I came up here a little early to count the morning flight and enjoy time with Tom Reed, who was taking over for the day. And we had a very low-flying Mississippi kite fly by. It was very exciting to see a rare bird like a Mississippi kite flying, not just within view of the Hawkwatch, but actually flew right overhead, and for probably a good 1 or 2 minutes straight, the profile and beauty and all was just circling right over our heads, less than 100 feet overhead. It was very special. So that's a personal highlight for me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Eric. So we were talking about timing. You know, Eric and I's time is sort of coming to an end here at the Hawkwatch. But actually, the Hawkwatch itself continues for a whole another month. Jesse Amesbury, the counter, and Tom Reed, the count coordinator, will be continuing to come up here and monitor the raptor migration for a whole another month, all the way through November 30th. So not only is there variation in timing among diurnal and nocturnal migrants, but there's also early season and late season migrants in terms of raptors. So osprey, for instance, was an early season migrant that we saw a lot of way back in September and into early October. We've still got a few stragglers coming through, and most of them are actually young birds, and they've been kind of fun to watch because they haven't really mastered the art of fishing yet. So we've been enjoying watching these last few osprey practice catching fish out of the pond here at the Hawkwatch. Broadwing hawks have a relatively short migration window. They've come and gone on their migration, but there's still lots of cool birds to see that migrate a bit later in the season. We had our first golden eagle of the season just last week, and that's a bird we typically see a handful of, and most often that's later on in the fall. Another bird that's a later season migrant, which is our raptor of the week this week, is the red-tailed hawk. So we're starting to see some pretty good numbers of these guys migrating through. And I bet this is a bird that a lot of you are familiar with. So red-tailed hawks are really widespread and common across North America. But they have like a lot of variation. There's different color morphs and different plumages of the red-tailed hawks depending on what region of North America that you're in. But this is a typical looking red-tailed hawk that we'd see here out in eastern North America. And there's a few things you can use to identify red-tailed hawk. So right off the top of your head, you might think, well, duh, look for the red tail. That works sometimes, but actually the young red-tailed hawks don't have the red tail yet. Only the adults do. So the young red-tailed hawks will have sort of this like really thinly barred or banded tail, and they'll develop that reddish orange tail when they become adults. So that's not the most consistent field mark to look for. Things that are a little more consistent are these patagial patches. So these dark bars on the leading edges of the wings. All red-tailed hawks will have that marking. Additionally, they'll have this dark belly band. So this vertical sort of teardrop streaking across the belly. And that's a really good field mark to look for on red-tailed hawks that you might see perched up on telephone poles, for instance, as you're driving along the highway. That's a really good opportunity to see these birds is on road trips, and often they're perched. So look for that belly band as a clue to tell you it's a red tail. Red tails are butios, so they're in that soaring raptor group. They've got these broad, rounded wings and a relatively short tail. They also have a really distinctive call, which you've probably heard. Movie producers, TV show producers like to use the red-tailed hawk call for pretty much any raptor that they're using in a movie or TV show, whether that's an eagle, a peregrine falcon. Sometimes I've even heard the red-tailed hawk call used for a dinosaur in movies. So apparently it's what people think that these predators should sound like, but it's a pretty distinctive high-pitched call that these birds make. So really exciting to start to see these guys coming through, and plenty more to look forward to throughout November. So again, as our time is coming to an end here, it's just really interesting to think about timing of bird migration, whether that's differences between night and day, differences between September, October, November. Really fascinating thing to study and observe here at the Hawkwatch. Now I'll share one of my favorite moments from the season. I think it would have to be just a couple weeks ago, we had a gray ghost come by the platform. So that's the adult male northern harrier, and they are just beautiful birds, a really light gray color with some black wingtips, and they just float over the marsh. And I thought that was an appropriate bird to share, considering again it's Halloween tomorrow. Gray ghost kind of fits in with the theme, but we had several visitors up on the platform, and it was the first one that they had ever seen. And just to hear like the excitement in people's voices and the oohs and the ahs as it flew by was really, really exciting. So just one of many amazing memories that we've made at the Hawkwatch this fall. Again, it's not over. If you're in town anytime in the next month, come up to the platform, bring your mask, but come up and say hi to Jesse and see what he's observing in terms of late season migrants. So again, teachers, parents, we have lesson extensions to go along with all of these videos, which you can find through the New Jersey Audubon website. Thank you everybody for tuning in and watching us and being with us virtually all throughout the season. Have a great afternoon. Bye.